Welcome back to Port Temecula, a local wine, beer, and beverage podcast with your hosts Rick DeLucio and Shannon Cole. In this episode, I return to Ramona's charming, rustic, hilly, and twisting roads to talk to Kim Whalin, Chairwoman of the Ramona Valley Vineyard Association's wine competition. We're diving into everything about Ramona Valley, what makes this AVA unique, the wines and grapes that thrive here, how the region has evolved since its establishment in 2006, tourism, where the AVA is headed next, and a fun comparison of wines from Ramona and Temecula. Whether you've never heard of Ramona Valley, or you've just been curious about exploring Southern California wine beyond Temecula, this is your guide to one of California's younger and most quaint wine regions. Cheers. Welcome back to Port Temecula. Recently, you might have heard me talk about being invited to judge wines for the Ramona Valley Vineyards Association, otherwise known as RVVA, their wine competition. The competition featured amateur and professional winemakers competing for various medals and, of course, the esteemed Best in Show, which for 2025 was awarded to a rosé of Cabernet Franc from, I'm going to always mess this up, but I got to look at my note. ZXQ Vineyards. I'm sure there's a little bit of story behind that our guest will tell us about, but here in Ramona. And I tasted that specific wine twice, I think maybe 3 times, and really enjoyed the fresh, vibrant red fruits that are there. A lot of floral, subtle spice notes. And I do recommend checking it out if you should ever get the chance. I bring all this up because today I am in Ramona at Old Julian Winery with the RVVA wine competition chairwoman, Kim Whalin. Firstly, Kim, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to attend the awards banquet. Fingers crossed, next year you invite me back and I can go to that one. And then secondly, please introduce yourself, how you ended up here in Ramona, and what your role is with the RVVA.
Like Rick said, my name's Kim Whalin. I actually moved down from Livermore, California, up north to work for General Atomics back in the day. I left Livermore. It had become a really active wine region while I was there. And while I did move to Ramona, at the time there were no wineries, I think one maybe. I moved here because I had horses and I wanted property. Then they passed an ordinance in 2007 allowing tasting rooms to open. And I saw these wineries, these tasting rooms starting to develop. And I was like, I have to be a part of this. It was so much fun in Livermore. And I'm going to be able to get in on the ground floor. And this is going to be great. And so I had retired from my job and was looking to get involved. I started making cheese and doing wine pairings. And so I got to know a lot of the wineries through my cheese business. COVID killed my little cheese business, sadly. And although I'm still known as the cheese lady about town, but I started working for a winery. I took a WSET1 course, the Wine Spirit Educational Trust, became fascinated with the complexities of wine, and then went on to take the 2 and the 3. Once I got the 3, the RVVA decided I was capable of running a wine competition, and here I am.
Okay.
So that's
Are there similarities between cheese making and winemaking?
I think yes, in that the ingredient is key: grapes, milk. The terroir has a lot to do with how good the milk is, how good the grapes are, and with all of them, it's relatively simple process, right? Ferment the grapes, age the grapes, drink the wine. With the cheese, it's like heat the milk, make the curds, age the cheese. But there's a lot of practical knowledge. What happens when the wine's not acid enough? What happens when the wine's too acidic? How do you do that? How do you know that? What do you do to correct it? Some of it's nature, some of it's climate, some of it's magic, some of it's prayer, and you're just happy when you get a good batch, be it wine, cheese, whatever.
Fascinating. So for people who are really unfamiliar with Ramona Valley, can you describe the AVA and what makes it unique from kind of like a terroir and climate perspective and location maybe?
Sure. So Ramona, I would say it's got all the things you need, right? It's got the sun. It's got the poor soils with the minerality and the decomposed granite. It's got the gap that brings in the cooling weather from the ocean. It's got the sun. Obviously in America we can irrigate, so we've got water on top. I think, though, what's really nice about Ramona is we tend to be a little bit higher than your average area. We get a lot of sun. We rarely get damaging rains kind of at harvest. I mean, it happens, obviously. We're talking about nature here. But typically we get cooling weather in the early part of the year, the May gray, June gloom part of San Diego. Then we get bright sun after that till harvest. Rarely do we get a last-minute hailstorm or rains that are going to dilute your grapes. Our sun, we rarely lose the acid. So for us, almost every year, 24.5 bricks with acid is an average occasion. You get that in a place like Burgundy or Bordeaux, it's a banner year. They're making reserve wines. So I think the climate is here. The soil, the decomposed granite, the poor soil makes the grapes fight and become much more flavorful, if you will. A lot of little microclimates. So if you want to grow a white, there's little valleys that are a little more shaded, a little bit cooler, where you can experiment with those and bring on some really nice.
Okay. And geographically, for those who aren't familiar with Southern California kind of layout, where is Ramona in respect to the ocean, to San Diego?
So we're northeast of San Diego. So we're going to be inland, probably, it's like an hour to get to the coast, so 30 miles, 33 miles. We're up in the mountains. We're, again, probably 30, 40 miles north of San Diego. So kind of in the middle of the county, up against the mountains. I would consider this kind of high desert, actually.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a lot of rolling landscape around here, windy roads, as I found out driving here.
A lot of windy roads, a lot of small windy roads,
yes.
Which is interesting for tasting rooms. Very rural, very dry, very sparsely.
Do you get in Temecula? We get that kind of oceanic breeze that comes in about 4, 5 p.m. and cools everything down. I live rather close to the gap where it comes in, so I get it before wine country gets it. Do you guys get that here? I know and I bring that up because I think after the wine competition we were talking and people were kind of talking me through the geography, and there are certain grapes that do varietals that have been found to do better closer to the ocean, and then other things have done better farther away.
So we do have the cooling weather. Our diurnal shift, if you will, can be 40 degrees difference from day to night. So that's what you need, right, for the grapes. They love that. So we do get that cooling breeze that comes in. We do have a gap that comes up through the mountains, and you will see kind of on the west side of town. On the west side of town, you're going to get more cooling. There's more ocean breezes. On the east side of town, a little bit less. So you do see a difference in the grapes that are planted in those two areas. But yes, I mean, that cooling is everything, right? Otherwise, the grapes, you want that kind of cool evening and the hot day. And we have that in spades here in Ramona.
And this is a relatively young area for an AVA. I think your next year will be the 20th anniversary. Right. So there's all kinds of things planned.
We're hoping.
But how has it changed and you've been here pretty much from the beginning. How has it changed in that time?
The winery has evolved, if you will, from the Amateur Winemakers Association. So they had a gentleman here named Lum Eisman who gets our Best in Show award. Is called the Lum Eisman Best in Show Award because of his contribution to this area. So he was really, really, really key. Grew up in Rancho Cucamonga making wine along the I-15. So his wines, he called them Côte de Freeway wines. So that's the big joke. Anyway, so he was there. He mentored, he helped, he got all these people involved in planting vineyards, growing careful grapes, growing good grapes, and how to make wine. And he wrote a handbook on making wine that many, many, many of the winemakers here still use. It's crazy. It's a PDF thing they download. Never made any money off it. So that's how the region started. There was a meeting, I think in 2000, where they had 16 people met. One of the guys was on the planning committee. The planning committee for Ramona met the fourth Wednesday of the month. So couldn't do that, so they met on the fourth Tuesday of the month. And that is the date that the RVVA still meets monthly. So that's kind of cool, I think. So there were 16 of them. They were talking about the Amateur Winemakers Association was San Diego, the whole county. And they decided they wanted to focus on Ramona just because it's enough different. The microclimates are enough different that they wanted to focus on kind of their region. It was kind of a confluence of one of the people in the group was a lawyer, one was a botanist, one was a historian, one was a great organizer, and they pushed through. They got the county. I mean, if you're a winemaker, you deal with county issues all the time. It's a disaster most of the time. It's a struggle. It was going to cost them $250,000 to get this ordinance, but they were able to negotiate and manage and get the AVA, if you will, passed. And I believe when they got it passed in 2006, there had not been a new AVA in, I want to say, since 1970 or something like that. It was crazy how long it had been. Once the AVA got passed, a lot of these guys started opening tasting rooms. As with any small tasting room with a retired winemaker, there's a lot of learning. There's a big learning curve. When we would go to the wineries in the early days, we would buy bottles of wine because we wanted them to succeed and not die. Now we buy them because they actually taste good. So, there's a, and I think most of them would agree. It's a big learning curve. They were taking lessons through UC Davis. They were being mentored by various people. But there was not a big wine community here. There was not professional winemakers here.
Has the growth been relatively steady, or was there a point in time over the last 20 years that things kind of like went on a higher upwards curve?
I think initially there were probably 5 or 6 wineries, and then there was I'm skipping over a lot of details, so you're welcome, but there was a lot of issues with the county, a lot of, 1 step forward, 5 steps back, that sort of thing. The ordinance was rewritten a couple of times. They just have a new one that was rewritten this year that they're all commenting on. So it's been a struggle. It's been a lot of hard work. None of it's been easy. But I will say probably around 2012-ish, 2014, the wineries just started multiplying, like 500% growth a year. We went from like 4 or 5 tasting rooms to 45 tasting rooms today. Now people are starting to look for ways to get out of the wine business.
It's a tough business.
It's a tough business. It's a lifestyle. You've got to work day and night. There's never a break. And the wine consumers are dropping. There aren't as many as they used to be, so there's a smaller piece of the pot. So I think it's coming into its own. It's maturing. The wines are getting better. The wineries are getting more savvy. The experiences are nicer. But it's been a struggle.
How does the RVVA support your local wineries?
So the RVVA
and growers, I guess.
Yeah, it's like I mentioned, there is that monthly meeting that is open to everybody associated with the RVVA, but it is focused on the winemaker. So there's a lot of education that comes in there, like, pests, how to mitigate pests, irrigation solutions, what to do if this happens, cellar cleanliness, all of those sorts of things. What do you do with Brett? What do you do with VA? What do you do with... so that, they bring in education.
So real technical stuff to help out and help each other grow. And one of the last shows talked about the rising tide lifts all boats, that type of philosophy, helping each other out.
So they have that. They've got a marketing group that goes and pours at a lot of the local, everybody's got a wine sipping whatever at every city, right? So they go and they represent multiple wineries at that, trying to promote, don't just go to Temecula, no offense, but stop in Ramona on the way up there.
Right.
And
just bringing exposure to everybody, to the areas as a whole. Has there been discussion of, in Temecula, there's actually, I want to say it's like it's a 1% tax on you go out to wine country. They introduced that 4 or 5 years ago, and that money was supposed to go, and not to get myself into trouble, I'm going to say that that money still goes to where it's supposed to go to help with the marketing growth. I want to say that Paso just recently did the same thing, and there was a lot of discussion. People didn't want that tax on there. That tax just goes, it's like a hotel tax. It doesn't go to the wineries themselves. It just gets passed right on to the consumers. Has there ever been a discussion of anything like that in this area?
Boy, I'm unaware of a specific winery tax, but that doesn't mean there isn't one, but I'm unaware of it. And I think that if something like that was being proposed around here, I probably would have heard discussions about it.
Complaints, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, we just got the CRV tax, right, for the bottles, which is causing a lot of kind of heartburn as to how do we implement that. Because with most of these, they come without guidelines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just so. But that's the most recent one. San Diego's a big tourist community. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of like hotel taxes and restaurant taxes, and they tend to be more contained in the city and the ocean area. But yeah, I'm sure as we grow, we'll get ours if we haven't already.
One of the things you showed me earlier, the way you help wine growers or winemakers, you showed me these cards as part of the wine competition dinner. You can explain it.
So for the wine competition awards banquet, we thought it'd be fun to get the winemakers a chance to tell their story. We called it Make Your Voice Heard. So the questions were, what was the best advice you were given starting out in the industry? I want to say 87% of them said, don't do it. Get out while you can. And then they said, what do you feel is your biggest accomplishment as a winery? This one right here, haven't been bit by a rattlesnake yet.
That's always a positive.
Always a positive. Staying open for 12 years, growing and preserving and making natural wines regardless of the industry, which is kind of nice. The industry comes and goes. So let's see what else. Making a good tasting wine, always a good accomplishment. We like that one. And I meet great people who want to buy grapes. So that was, their accomplishments. And then what is the worst mistake that you've made that is also humorous? Oh, I like this one. A section of the vineyard is 3 or 4 varietals all mixed together because a 14-year-old was given a bucket of cuttings and told to plant them.
That's great. That's great.
The field blend that resulted is quite tasty. So
hey, maybe that could do it.
Right? And then little caveat that the winemaker today was that 14-year-old.
Oh, nice. Nice way to tie it back.
And then let's see. What's the worst mistake you've made that's also humorous? Bringing in sheep and trying to be biodynamic. I happen to know that this person brought in sheep and the sheep ate all his cuttings.
Oh.
Decimated it. Spray your vines with herbicide accidentally without killing them. Spilling limoncello all over the floor while racking.
I'm sure that's happened a lot. If you've made wine, you've spilt wine.
So just kind of some fun comments for a chance to share the worst mistake you've made, deciding to open my winery. So I think we can all appreciate this is a hard job, but lots of community and lots of fun.
So that brings it. How does the association and the area as a whole balance that kind of rural charm and connectedness? Because it is more remote than, say, I think Temecula is. And how does it balance that with kind of growth in wine tourism? And do the opinions vary?
Yeah, so there's the little nugget right there. The opinions vary quite a bit. There were a lot of people. There's a group that would feel that all the wine should be estate, that there should not be any need for events or food or music, or that it needs to be pure wine and it needs to be estate and it needs to be serious business, like it needs to be. And then there's another group that says we need to make our living and we want to have events and we want to have music and we want to have food pairing dinners and we want to bring in more people. I think probably most wineries in Ramona are on very windy roads, as you experienced.
Yes.
Very windy, 2-lane for the most part, and poorly marked just because of the permits. We can't put up big signs, and our parking lots are small, and we don't really have room for the party buses. We don't have room for big events. The wineries don't make a lot of wine. I think probably the biggest wineries make 1,600 cases a year, so not near the level. To grow, everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to make money. I don't know that anybody has visions of becoming huge just because the area can't support it.
Yeah.
And how are we going to...
What's the average size for a wine grower or for a winery out here, as far as acreage? Or I'm guessing under 10?
Yes.
Well, under 10.
So I would say most of them have at least 10.
Okay.
This particular property we're on is 20.
Okay. And it's probably one of the larger ones?
This is the second largest vineyard in the Ramona AVA.
Okay.
So it's large. Ramona Ranch Winery, where I work, is 10 acres. I would say 10-ish is, I'm going to go with that. 10-ish is an average.
Okay. And before we kind of switch gears and talk a little bit more about varietals and styles, in Temecula, we have, there isn't enough production of local wine and local wine grapes. There's a lot of purchased wine that comes from elsewhere in the state. Lodi, Paso, people are always buying grapes. Is that a thing here? Are wine growers and producers sticking to just Ramona Ramona grown grapes?
Yeah. So, again, that's going to depend on the winery. Everybody's got a philosophy. An AVA, to be labeled as a local wine, has to be 85% produced in the AVA. I think where people get hot is if it's mislabeled. If you buy, and people do, right? I mean, like, your consumer wants a Chardonnay. Chardonnay doesn't grow well in this area, but a winery will buy a Chardonnay because their consumers want it,
yeah,
and they want to make money, so they'll buy it.
Yeah.
I think as long as it's accurately labeled, for the most part, people are okay with it at this point in time. I think where the problem gets is if the wine gets mislabeled.
And that makes sense. So switching gears, and speaking of varietals, what grape varietals are grown here, and which ones does the Valley think that does really well here? I
would say probably the biggest grape in the area is Sangiovese. This region has a the soil, the poor soil, the bright sun, very similar to Tuscany, and most of the wineries that you'll visit in Ramona are going to have a Sangiovese, and most of them are quite nice. You'll also see, there's a lot of Italian varietals you're going to see, Montepulciano, Aglianico. There's a winery grown in Sagrantino even, a couple of Barberas. So like your more Italian varietals are really nice. They grow well here. You're going to see southern France Syrah, a lot of Syrah, Viognier, super, super lovely here. In fact, at the wine competitions, our Viogniers always are some of the higher ranked wines. And then we do get some northern Spain, the Albarino in particular. Tempranillo, I think we do have Tempranillo here, a little bit less than some of the other varietals. I think maybe not quite hot enough here, my opinion. And then, of course, you're going to have Merlot and Cab and Sauvignon Blanc. And I think that the Cabernet Sauvignon that's grown in this area is grown because the consumer expects it.
Yes.
How's that for politic?
No, I don't think it's anything dissimilar to, there's Chardonnay and Cabernet that's grown in Temecula, and I generally have the same response. There's even some doing Pinot Noir, but that's more higher up elevation in the hills around Temecula.
Yeah.
I don't know of anybody doing it on the valley floor, which is just, would be insane.
Yeah, I think there's one winery in our region who's doing Pinot, and they found a hillside in their vineyard that's particularly cool.
Oh, yeah.
But again, it's not, there's some beautiful Pinots out there. So let's do what Ramona does well, and I think that's Sangiovese. We actually have a lot of really interesting Grenaches too, goes well here. Just kind of that more Mediterranean climate.
Mm-hmm. It's very, very, very similar to what Temecula does. Do you think that the wines from here have developed their own kind of style?
They're developing their style.
Okay.
Yeah. I think one of our judges wrote an article after the competition called Ramona Rising. I don't know if you saw that. And it just commented on, I think in the early days of a winemaker, they want to make their wine complex. So they put oak staves in it because they can't afford a barrel, right? And they over-acidify it because they want it to be bright. And they're chasing, for instance, a New Zealand style of Sauvignon Blanc or a Napa style of Cab or...
They're trying to mimic something that is a benchmark but that isn't what the benchmark. I get it.
Yeah. Without the environment to create that, right? Or the knowledge.
Right.
And so you get a lot of flabby or over oaked, and the winemakers here are learning to restrain themselves and let the grapes speak for what they are. For instance, I was just with a group, we did a Sauvignon Blanc tasting on Wednesday, and the local Sauvignon Blancs they have some tropical notes. They don't have the green in them. They're a little bit fuller bodied. They don't have that heavy grapefruit, grassy flavor. They're starting to just become, what they are. They're just a fuller-bodied, mellow, lovely Sauvignon Blanc that is in stainless steel. It's not an oaked Bordeaux. It's not, just a really lovely expression of the varietal. And they're starting to learn that and be okay with it, and the consumers are starting to like it. So I think it's both. You have to make something that you can sell, and if you make something that reflects the area and is true and balanced and tasty, it's gonna sell.
To kind of go along with that, are there people experimenting out here? And is natural wine, for its lack of any real term, but are there people that are playing with that in the space?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. We, Ramona Ranch Winery, who I work for, made what they called a hippie wine. And it was a Sangiovese, and they just basically, no interference, put it in a barrel, didn't feed the yeast, didn't filter it, bottled it, and it had very mixed reviews. Some people, the people who liked kombucha liked the wine. Let's just put it that way. And
there's a market for everything. It may not be for us, but
it's out there for sure. It's out there, and I think the trend is for sure to be less invasive, I can't speak to this winery because I don't know their winemaker, but I know at Ramona Ranch, the winemaker starts all his wines with a native yeast and, puts the sulfites in later, trying to become less invasive, allow the fruit a higher expression, and just do what they have to do and not try to manipulate the wine.
Mm-hmm. From the viticultural side, are there people... You mentioned biodynamic and the sheep earlier, but are there people playing around with regenerative and biodynamic and organic? Is that a movement here too?
Yes, absolutely. Sustainable, organic, biodynamic. There are vineyards that do all of that.
Okay.
And that's the trend. I think we're seeing more and more of that.
More people buy into that, yeah.
More people are starting to think about what's coming after they leave and how can we take care of the planet. So that's the trend, I think, overall in general.
What challenges or opportunities do you think Ramona face?
Well, the county, of course, is the number one. Let's go with that. But yeah, I think the permits, the constant battle to be able to do what you need to do to stay open is no joke. And the TTB with the labels, and I think probably a lot of the same struggles that every winery throughout the world faces.
I hear the same all the time from people in Temecula. Looking at it shouldn't take 5 years to open a winery, which has taken before, or 2 years to add an extension of one room to your winery.
Right.
It's excessive.
And
unnecessary.
And this winery, like they mentioned to you, they do brandies.
Mm-hmm.
They've been trying to get a label approved for 3 months. And they finally got it approved yesterday because they made a phone call and said, this is the third time we've called you. We haven't gotten a call back. Boom, it got approved. So there's just, everybody has a horror story.
So that's the biggest challenge. It's just red tape and
then I think the other
BS.
challenge is being known. Like when you come to San Diego, you can go to the beach, you can go to the zoo, you can go to Old Town, you can go to the Gas Lamp, you can go to SeaWorld, So how do you, as a very small group of wineries, get people's attention to say, hey, come out to Ramona for a day? Or the locals, the people who live here, how do we get them to say, oh, let's go spend a day in Ramona instead of bypassing us on the way to Temecula? So I think just getting people's attention is tough. And marketing costs a lot of money. And most of these wineries have very small budgets. Mm-hmm. So I would say those two things probably. I mean, aside from making good wine. And
so what opportunities do you think that really would play to your strengths?
So for me, I feel like every wine region goes through this time, and it's a super special time. If you go to a wine tasting room in Ramona, it's not crowded. You're probably talking to the winemaker or their family. any interest at all, they're going to be like, here, let me show you my barrel room. Let me give you a barrel sample. Let me take you on a tour. That doesn't last. It's not sustainable, but we've got it in Ramona for a while now. So I think if you're somebody who's wanting a more intimate tasting space, you want to get to know the people, the philosophy of the winery is really clear when you walk in. And one winery is going to be sustainable. One winery is going to be about restraint. One's going to be about dancing under the full moon. And those are really obvious because the owners are there and that philosophy reflects them. And I think that's a huge opportunity, and it should be really taken advantage of while it's here.
What keeps you excited about the future here?
I just see the region getting better. I see them becoming more, like the wine gets, like I like really good wine. You know, like you'll go to a place in Napa or Sonoma and you just get bottle after bottle of exceptional wine. And you leave happy. And I see that happening more in Ramona. You know, I'll go to a winery now, and the wines are. So this is Kim speak. I'm just talking for myself here. Like, don't send me emails. But I view
don't come at Kim.
I view wine as like a melody, like as a orchestra, right? And when you taste a really good wine, they're all playing together, right? The music's in agreement. If you get a bad wine, like some of the ones in the competition, right? They're discordant. You know, there's too much bass, or there's too much drum, or there's too much screech. And you're seeing here in Ramona them coming together better. There's more unity, there's more, and there's wineries now that are hiring full-time commercial winemakers, a few, and I think that level of expertise is forcing all the other wineries to up their game, if you will.
Are there breweries here in Ramona? Or
there's one.
There's one brewery. Okay.
Smoking Cannon. And they make their wine. They do music. They've got a great following.
And other than here, there's some brandy. Are there anybody else kind of doing some other sort of alcohol or beverage-based products?
Yeah, if you get up into the Julian area, which we'll claim as ours for now, there are some cider places.
Okay.
And there's some... Actually, in Ramona, there's a place that does mead, so they do a lot of fruit meads. I think that's it. There's a lot of olive oil being made here. I don't know if that counts, if that's what you're looking for, but cider, mead.
Yeah, so there's other stuff.
Mainly,
so
there's a little bit, right?
You don't necessarily have to have wine if wine isn't your thing. Can people, and this goes into my final question here, for people outside the area who want to experience Ramona wines and Ramona wineries, what should they know if they're going to visit in person? And to kind of go along with it, if you come here, we're at Old Julian today, if you're not into wine, are there other options for people?
So Old Julian actually serves cider. So they get cider from a winery from a cidery in Julian, and they serve it here. So you could get cider here. I would say 90% of the wineries only serve wine. Most of the wineries don't serve food. So if you're coming to Ramona, bring your dog, bring your picnic, and, come prepared to taste wine. It's still small, still very rural. It doesn't have the commercial aspect of Temecula, so there's no restaurants in the wineries. There's no, we don't have Cokes for your children, so it is truly wine tasting and pretty much only wine, with a few exceptions. There are some wineries that Poco Montano that just opened has cheese trays, charcuteries. So there are exceptions. I would also say the wineries are open. They're not going to be open 7 days a week. They're open on the weekends. Some of them are only open on Saturdays.
So it's really a weekend operation.
It's a weekend, Friday through Sunday. There's 3 wineries open on Thursday. There's 2 wineries open on Monday. But really the bulk of them are going to be open Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
And then from a travel perspective, it's a good half hour from Escondido from the highway. Mm-hmm. And so people should know that you are going to have to drive here. There are going to be some windy roads. It's going to be some up and down and elevation. We just encourage people to be safe too.
There's some Airbnb. There's quite a few Airbnb. We don't have a lot of hotels. Hopefully that'll change. But there are quite a few Airbnbs. So we get a lot of people who just want to get out of the city. We get a lot of people out of LA, and they just want to get out of the city. So they get an Airbnb and they go for hikes, because we have beautiful hikes out here in the backcountry. So if that's your jam, just beautiful spots. And then after they hike in the morning, then they come back and hit the winery, have a little lunch in town, and so it's just a nice way to spend a weekend too, I think.
Okay, so before we do a little tasting with Kim, we have 2 wines today. One is a wine from Temecula, one is a wine from Ramona, and they're both going to be a blend of black grapes. Is there anything that you want to plug before we take a moment here and pour some wine?
I guess I would just encourage you to come and visit, to taste the the uniqueness of the region, and enjoy the kind of the small timiness of it before it goes away. I think that's probably my biggest plug. And
where can they find you online?
rvva.com. I think I should have been ready for that. RVVA, and there's a map, right? So online.
But they just Google RVVA. Well, you might want to do Ramona.
Is it
Vineyards?
Let me look it up real quick.
Ramona Valley Vineyards or Ramona Valley Wine, and I bet that you'll probably find most of the information you're looking for online.
There's an online map that you can download. They've got it split into like the East End, the West End. Because the roads are super windy, and so if you can kind of get 3 wineries next to each other, or 3 or 4 wineries on one side.
I was just going to ask, is it the kind of thing you just suggest people to do no more than 3 or 4 in a day? And
I think you do more than 4 unless you're really spitting and tasting and spitting. Your palate's burnt; they all taste the same. You're over it, right? So I think 3, 4 if you're professional, right? Is kind of your best bet. And it's RamonaValleyVineyards.com.
RamonaValleyVineyards.com. So we'll put that in the show notes too. And we're going to take a quick break here, pour some wines, and we'll be back.
Yay!
All right, I am back with Kim, and she's got 2 wines in front of her. They're both red wines, and to dispel any mysteries around this, they are actually blends today, and they are what we call Bordeaux blends. So Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Malbec, and Cabernet Franc are the grapes that would go into a Bordeaux blend, and both of these wines are Cabernet dominant with other grapes and varietals blended in that. It kind of varies depending on what. So one is from Ramona, and the other wine is going to be from Temecula. So it'll be an interesting comparison. And Kim, I'll toss it to you first. If you just want to describe, both the wines individually or together, and then once you're done with that, I'll ask you which one do you think is from Ramona, since we are in Ramona. And why do you think that is the case?
And if I'm wrong, you cut this part, right?
No, it goes on your permanent record. Sorry. Yes.
So I get a lot of black fruit in both of them. The wine number 1 I find to be a little bit jammier. I get a little bit of a higher oak and acid content on wine 2. Maybe a little bit less kind of jammy notes, but still black fruit. Both of them are delicious, by the way. I think they're both great. I feel like, one more sniff, I feel like wine number 2 is the Ramona wine.
Are you going to stick with that?
Oh, don't do that to me.
By the way, I do that to everybody, no matter what they say. I'm like, are you going to go with it? Is that going to be your answer?
Is that your final answer?
Is that your final answer? Right? I should have done a game show podcast instead of a very, very niche
Do I get $1 million if I'm right?
Wine. What would you work at a winery? You serve wine to people.
I do.
Yeah. What would you tell people to have with this? What kind of food?
So I think both of these would be really nice with like a pepper steak, like a steak frit de poivre, something like that. I think they would both go nice with a barbecue, but a lighter barbecue, not the big, rich, sugary barbecues.
Yeah, not
but
like ribs, barbecues.
But like a rubbed, grilled steak kind of thing. And I think the wine number 2, So I'm thinking this is the Ramona wine, and I'm thinking it could go with like a heavy lasagna-y kind of meal. I'm not so sure wine number 1 would do that, but like a heavy tomato dish. That's what I would do with
So
these.
you're sticking with number 2 is the Ramona wine.
I feel like, yes.
Do they both feel Southern California, though? I think they
Yes,
both feel like
yes.
that riper fruit profile.
fruit.
The tannins aren't big and chewy like you could get out of Napa, or like really gritty and rough, kind of like Bordeaux. That's all.
They're more so that, they're ripe. They're super ripe. They're super kind of baked fruit, as opposed to like a Bordeaux would be more raw fruit, and a Napa would be more like black. So yeah, I think these are both really nice Southern California expressions.
Okay. Well, you're wrong. So wine number 1 is from Old Julian here. It's the Tres Sorel. Tres Sorel. It is, I believe, a blend of Cabernet and, oh boy, I don't remember my exact notes on this, but it's a Cabernet Merlot and
I thought it had Sangiovese
Malbec?
in it. Oh, it doesn't have Sangiovese. See, this one had the more acid in it for me, and I was thinking it had Sangiovese in it. So this is on me. I drink this Tres Sorel frequently, so I should know better.
But I think it's Malbec. I have to research it.
Yeah, it's blacker. I get that.
Wine number 2 is from Oak Mountain, and they've kind of undergone a change in ownership. This is Cabernet, Petit Verdot, Malbec, Cab Franc, and Merlot, but mostly
okay.
Cab
Very
Sauvignon.
similar then.
Weird thing about this bottle is they're moving away from putting Temecula Valley AVA on their wines. I'm not going to put any kind of theory as to why that is, but I'll just say that that is not an unusual thing in Temecula anymore.
So are they going more towards like a vineyard specific? No?
No.
Is that because of the difference in quality in wines in Temecula? Or like
There
we don't
has
have to answer
been
this?
a fair amount of turnover, I think, in ownerships of different estates or different wineries. And what I think is happening is that you might have 80% of the grapes that go into a blend or into a wine be from Temecula, and then another odd amount be from outside the region.
Oh, okay.
And so they're blending that to make a better wine that had been produced before. And I think in this case, the South Coast, when the new ownership came in, I want to say that I think there's a varietal in here that is not from their property in Temecula or nearby in Temecula.
Okay.
And I'm not going to speculate and say which variety of that blend is, but I think I know, because it is a tough grape to do in Temecula. So anyway, but yeah, I think pretty fascinating. I think I think you said something about the acidity being higher in that wine, which was a little. I think it's a little elevated, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Artificially
this one, and
maybe.
higher oak also in this one.
I think they do a fair amount of American oak, which I think is kind of prevalent.
Yes, especially when you first poured it. It's dissipating a little bit.
Yeah, it has that kind of vanilla bourbon kind of aroma compared to the first one, which is more of a neutral, more grape.
And so the reason I went the way I did is I find Ramona wines to be highly acidic. So that's why I picked the way I did. So it's interesting. It's good. I'm actually pleased I'm wrong. But so in like just a little comment here, when we're talking about, I think it's interesting the way the wine regions grow, and it becomes all about the vineyard, right? So you go to Bordeaux, you go to Burgundy, and it's all about the vineyard. And you're starting to see that in Napa, right? So if it's from Atlas Peak or it's from, whichever vineyard, they know the expression of that vineyard. And so with the competition, I've offered a vineyard award, because I think understanding which vineyards have like the best sun, the best irrigation, the best soil, becomes really important for a region to create an expression of who they are and what they are.
100%. I should also mention the alcohol is very similar.
Yeah.
One's 14.7, the other is 14.6. I think you can kind of get the alcohol off them, but that's not unusual for Southern California wine, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Although I did notice and researching some of the wines and then post our wine competition event, the alcohols generally are lower in Ramona than I've found in Temecula. Although there is a push to pick earlier and to get a lower alcohol in Temecula than the last couple years. So I don't know. Is
like,
that?
Yeah, I feel like the reds in Ramona are typically 14%.
Yeah.
That's kind of on average. I mean, there's different wineries that do different things, but on average, if you're drinking a red in Ramona, it's going to be 13.5 to 14.5.
Okay, which is a little, like probably a half or a full percentage lower than I find. I think 14.5, 14.6 is what the from Oak Mountain, the Vino Leon red blend is 14.6, and I would generally say that is about average-ish for Temecula wine.
Yeah.
And some push really high.
Yeah, well, I mean, and then you get that burn, right?
Yeah.
So, I think the Big Deep, Napa in particular, is classic for their 15+% wines with that big, deep, rich flavor, right? So, I think Ramona wines are definitely lighter than that, and you're going to see, like I said, 14's on average, occasionally a 14.5, occasionally a 13, 13.5, but not with the whites, but with the, although we do have a fair share of whites that are in their 14%. So
it's going to happen. So before we go, we always ask somebody and you can pair anything you want to. What are you going to pair with In-N-Out?
With In-N-Out.
Anything. It could be wine. It could be beer. It could be a cocktail. It could just be soda.
Boy, In-N-Out. Well, it's going to be wine because, that's what I drink. Cab.
Common answer. We get a lot of cab as an answer, and then sparkling wine. Those are kind of the two.
Really? That's interesting. I wouldn't have put sparkling.
I think people generally mention the sparkling as a way to cut through the fat a little bit in a different way and to freshen it up.
I can see
and we have a lot of people that are not meat eaters, so they want a grilled cheese, which I guess In-N-Out does a grilled cheese.
Okay.
So
I was going with the hamburger, so I could see with grilled cheese. I probably would say Merlot, but I don't care for Merlot personally, so I'm thinking...
Were you influenced by a movie in the early 2000s?
No, actually, no. This is like, I don't know, you don't have to... I went wine tasting, and I went to like 5 different wineries, and I kept dumping, when you're going to that many wineries, you can't drink all the wines, right? And I kept dumping like the 3rd or 4th taste. I was like, I don't care for this. And I realized, like on the 2nd or 3rd winery, the wine I kept dumping out was a Merlot. And it was like, I wasn't even consciously doing it. And ever since then, I'm like, blind tastings, whatever. It's got a bitter taste to me. So if I get a wine with like a bitterness to it, I know it's a Merlot. So.
Oh, interesting. I always associate Merlot with sort of like smooth blandness, unless it's really good. There are some really good Merlots out there, but there's a lot of like really average, boring
it's a
Merlots.
flabby grape. But there's some beautiful Merlots, but that finish for me is always a little bitter.
Okay. All right. Well, Kim, thanks again. If there's anything else that you want to say, we'll just wish people good luck and cheers.
All right. Good luck and cheers. And thank you for having me. This was fun.
All right. Thank you. Thanks again to Kim Whalin for a great overview on Ramona Valley. In the course of our discussion, I mentioned establishing a tax to support AVA marketing efforts, and I just wanted to briefly explain what that is. A Wine Improvement District, WID, is a self-imposed assessment that wineries agree to charge, often 1% to 2%, on direct-to-consumer sales like tastings, wine club shipments, events, and merchandise to fund marketing, tourism promotion, and business development for their region. Unlike a government tax, the revenue is collected by the businesses and used only for the agreed purposes. The Temecula Valley Wine and Agricultural Heritage District is an assessment district established to promote and enhance the Temecula Valley wine region. It's funded by a 1% assessment on gross sales from wineries within the district and aims to increase winery sales and revenue through marketing, brand awareness, and special projects. The district is managed by the Temecula Valley Wine Growers Association. Supporters say WIDs provide steady funding for promotion that membership dues can't match, but they are controversial. Critics argue the fee functions as a tax passed to consumers, raising prices, and some question whether benefits, such as increased visitation, are shared evenly or favor larger tourism-focused wineries. Others voice concerns about transparency, accountability, and whether marketing dollars are being used effectively. Temecula was the first to adopt a WID, with other regions either implementing or discussing implementation. A recent VinePair podcast episode, dived into this topic with a lot more depth than I can today. So if it's something you're interested in, please go look on that VinePair podcast. Later this week, Shannon and I kick off a new weekly short episode series dedicated to reviewing local products. We're starting with the Ramona theme, still fresh in mind, featuring Old Julian Winery's 2024 Picpole Blanc, dropping Thursday afternoon. The next week, we'll sit down with local entrepreneurs, Ryan and Katie Schumacher, to talk about the launch of their premium-focused Schumacher wines. If you've ever dreamed of creating your own winery label, they'll share exactly what it takes to make it happen. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to Pour Temecula and leave us a review. It really helps to keep the conversation flowing. Follow us on social media for behind-the-scenes content and updates on upcoming guests. Until next time, keep exploring, keep sipping, and cheers.